Yo, this video will be a ultimate guide showcase video of the Kinesis class. I love playing this class, and the gameplay in my opinion is really fun and versatile in many situations, which is why it's my main. Over the past few updates, Kinesis has received many positive balance changes and had gone a lot easier to play than what it was before, making the learning curve slightly easier as many of the micromanagement of the PP has been removed. So why don't we quickly go over the basic info and the entire gimmick of the Kinesis class. Kinesis is part of the Magician branch that uses psychic kinetic abilities to fight against its enemies. Unlike the traditional Magician class, or others that uses mana for skills, Kinesis use PP or psychic points for almost everything they do. So mana potions in general are pretty much useless to Kinesis. However, Kinesis are very dependent on management of this PP system, as this will be the deciding factor of how well you perform and manage the class. Normal skills of the Kinesis class will generate PP, whereas ultimate skills will consume PP. Kinesis players will have to know the cost of each ultimate skill during gameplay if want to play optimally, though this shouldn't be much of a problem nowadays. The gameplay gimmick of Kinesis is picking up mobs or objects and slamming them against other mobs, and summon otherworldly objects to fight while managing the regeneration and cost of the PP bar. Kinesis are a DPM class, meaning its damage mainly comes from consistently hitting the boss over a longer period of time, and goes best against stationary bosses, but not so much against very mobile bosses. Alright, that pretty much covers the basic info of the class. Now, why don't we go over the skills from beginning to 6th job? I will explain its uses along the way, depending on what skill it is. So going over the beginning, Psychic Attack is your basic normal attack that can be used by just using the attack key on your keyboard and will generate 1 PP. ESP is a passive that gives 10% crit rate, 12% avoidability, and plus 10 speed. Kinesis Link skill is 2% crit damage at level 1 and 4% crit damage at level 2. This Link skill is very important for everyone, as this is very significant boost to any class, whether bossing or training. So highly recommend it for everyone to at least make a Kinesis to level 120. Moving on to 1st job, Kinetic Crash is the first attacking skill Kinesis gets, also generate 1 PP when used. Psychic Force is a push skill that also applies a DLT and generates 1 PP when used. The DLT is not a lot of damage, so nothing to praise about. Ultimate Metal Press is Kinesis' first ultimate skill and costs 7 PP to use. This skill has a very high vertical range and applies a 15% defense ignore debuff. This will be your main bossing skill. It doesn't do a lot of damage in the beginning, but will get progressively stronger as you advance to the next job. Mental Shield is a toggle skill that is essentially your magic guard that reduces 60% damage but consumes 1 PP when hit. This should only be used if struggling to stay alive in the pre-5th job stage of playing Kinesis, though never used again ever after 5th job, as every hit by mobs and bosses will become based on max percent HP dealt. ESP Booster is an active buff skill that increases your attack speed by 2 stages. So be sure to slot this in your auto buff pet if you have one to get rid of the inconvenience to rebuff for attack speed. Kinetic Step is Kinesis' main mobility skill that is flash jump, and it's not just a regular flash jump, but a double flash jump that could jump in quite unique ways, like up jump then flash jump, and flash jump to up jump. Pretty nice mobility and versatility. Then Mental Fortitude, which is a passive. Moving on to 2nd job, Kinetic Pow Diver is another attack skill that generates 1 PP when used. It grants a super stance when used, meaning it could resist the knockbacks to some attacks from bosses that pushes the player. Psychic Blast is an upgrade of Psychic Force, and now allow Kinesis to push downwards, capable of moving mobs 1 platform below. Psychic Drain is a summon skill that lasts for 30 seconds that consistently hits enemy and regenerates 1 PP every hit on normal mobs. This also gives various ultimate skills a 40% chance to regenerate 1 PP every hit on bosses. Also a super stance skill, but only on cast animation. Kinda hard to match the timing, so I wouldn't rely on this. Ultimate Deep Impact costs 2 PP to use, and is basically Kinesis' teleport skill that has a very far range but with a startup animation. It is also able to remove debuffs from bosses like damage reflect or attack magic cancel. Then the last 4 are passive skills. Moving on to 3rd job, Psychic Grab is the debut of the main gimmick of the Kinesis class that allows you to pick up 3 mobs and slam them against other mobs, also generating 1 PP every use. Psychic Grab is a 2-step activation, meaning first step is picking up, then pressing it again to start attacking until the 4th or 5th slam. Psychic Assault is the final upgrade of Psychic Force, which increases the DLT damage and number of mobs pushed. Mind Tremor is a summon skill that creates a zone lasting 30 seconds and applies debuffs of 25% speed decrease, 10% defense ignore, and 10% additional final damage taken, but only from Kinesis attacks. This debuff will stay on for 30 seconds even if the enemy leaves the zone, also generating 1 PP when used. Ultimate Trainwreck costs 15 PP to use use and is also a summon skill that lasts 12 seconds and will constantly deal damage on the spot where it is summoned at. However, the damage will decrease by 5% by the duration. The placement of the spot where the train is summoned is around 2 characters wide, so it might be difficult in landing the placement, but thankfully the vertical range is very high. Also can generate 1 PP, but only on the first hit. Kinetic Combo is an additional passive attacking skill that has a chance to attack surrounding mobs. This is kinda like a final attack like in other classes, however this doesn't activate from ultimate skills, Psychic Force, Psychic Drain, and Mental Tempest. Kinetic Combo are the little small ball that flies behind the character. They will target nearby mobs upon activation. In case you don't know, ultimate skills are the ones that have a yellow border around it with a letter U on the bottom right. Mental Tempest is the hyper skill. We'll go over that very soon. Then Kinetic Jaunt is the float skill that allows Kinesis to stop midair or move up. This float skill only lasts around 1 to 2 seconds in the air and has a 4-second cooldown, but if used with another skill that's going on, it will cost 2 PP to use. Then the last 5 are passive skills, with Psychic Bulwark being the 100% knockback resist. Moving on to the 4th job, Psychic Clutch is the final upgrade of Psychic Grab, allowing you to pick up 5 mobs and gain 2 extra lines, and gain a debuff to mobs that reduces their defense by 15% for 30 seconds. Ultimate Psychic Shot is an upward curve throwing skill that throws the mobs away from Psychic Clutch. This skill costs 5 PP to use, and could also apply the same debuff from Psychic Clutch. The range of this skill is pretty big, but very random at times, as the spread of the curve could be quite small. If the mob does not die from Psychic Shot, they will be dropped on a nearby platform from where the skill range ends. If used against the boss, it should have a total of 15 lines instead of 3, but requires you to land all 5 shots against the boss. To do this, it's best to stand fairly close to the boss and launch it from there. Might be difficult to use against smaller bosses, however. To activate this skill, press up and the skill Psychic Clutch. Ultimate BPM is a toggle hurricane skill that consumes 1 PP as it continuously attacks a mob or boss. This will not consume any PP if not attacking anything. And if the PP bar reaches 0, the skill will stop itself, but will resume once it reaches back to at least 3 PP left. I would not recommend using this during training and should only be used during bossing. The skill has a chance to recover 1 PP every attack because of the passive skill from Psychic Drain, but only against bosses. Mindquake is the final upgrade to Mind Tremor, and this increases the speed reduction to enemies to 30%, increase 15% defense ignore, and 15% additional final damage to Kinesis attacks. President's Order is their Maple Warriors, so 15% all stat. Psychic Charger is a PP recovery skill that recovers 50% of the maximum PP with a 45 seconds cooldown. It is very recommended to max out PP hyperstat in the character's hyperstat tab. This should recover 20 PP after maxing out the PP hyperstat. Without it, this will only recover 15 PP. Clear Mind is the class's hero will, then the rest are passive skills for the Kinesis. Moving on to hyper skills on the active skill tab, Mental Tempest is a full map attack skill and a full PP recovery and Kinesis iframe skill that should last around 7 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown. Mental Overdrive is a 26-second buff that cuts all the PP consumption skills or ultimate skills cost by half and passively recover 1 PP until it ends with a cooldown of 3 minutes. This is what you will use before starting your burst. Mental Shock is a 10-second bind skill with a 3 minutes cooldown. The range of this is fairly small and quite easy to miss using this skill. You will know the boss is binded with a gray aura or halo on top of them. Moving on to the 5th job of Kinesis. Psychic Tornado is Kinesis' first 5th job skill. It summons a large cube on top of the player's head and periodically attacks surrounding enemies for 20 seconds. And after 20 seconds, or if pressed again, the cube will be thrown and explode, dealing loads amount of damage, depending on the size of the cube, a cooldown of 3 minutes. This skill costs 15 PP to use. The cube will get bigger and should reach its max size in 4 seconds. This also has a chance to recover 1 PP during each interval of attack when hitting a boss. This skill is amazing during training as the range of the skill is pretty big and covers a huge portion of the map while flash jumping around. But it's a whole different story when bossing and bursting with the skill. I usually use the entire 20 seconds of this skill during a burst and hope the boss doesn't suddenly disappear when I am about to throw the cube and have it explode. Especially when it's really easy to miss using the skill, as there are many times when I am facing the wrong direction and throw it where it wouldn't hit anything at all once it explodes. And if stunned by anything, right before the throw animation, it just wouldn't do anything after it. The entire cube would just disappear. Kind of a waste when it happens. Though it's okay to throw after 4 seconds when the cube is at its maximum size to at least guarantee the explosion damage in a burst bind window. Kind of a long explanation, but I think this is one of the riskier skills to use in a bossing scenario. Ultimate Mind Over Matter is a summon skill that summons a icosahedron shape that floats around for 30 seconds, dealing damage to enemies that touches it with a cooldown of 90 seconds and consumes 10 PP to use and has a chance to recover 1 PP every hit. Press the skill again to have it float towards the player's current location. Also could use Psychic Force to push it or make it float faster or in a different direction. This skill is considered to be Kinesis' half burst, which can be used every 90 seconds after full burst, along with Angelic Buster Link and Otherworldly Goddess Blessing. Great to use in a bossing scenario as it allows you to continue dealing high damage for 30 seconds with a 60-second downtime, which is really quick. However, it will be pretty difficult to control if against a very mobile boss like Saren or Damien, as he would just keep teleporting around while this skill slowly moves right over. Ultimate Shockwave will be Kinesis' main mobbing skill, and I believe to be the only 5th job skill in the game that has no cooldown and a spammable attacking skill. It picks up the enemies from Psychic Grab and launches them in a straight line. At the end of the range, it will create a dark hole, and if the dark hole deals damage to anything, it will recover 1 PP every hit. However, there can only be one dark hole at a time. This consumes 3 PP at every use and has a chance to recover 1 PP from the launching animation. The range of the skill is very big and allowing Kinesis to even hit mobs from 3 platforms. While it is spammable, I wouldn't rely on it heavily to clear mobs for a longer period of time during a grinding session, since the cost for PP will add up very quick if consistently using it. You can put the skill twice in a macro if you want to use it on a 1-button press rather than 2. Since this skill is a 2-step skill like Psychic Grab, there is no advantage between macro and no macro doing this, as it's more of a player preference thing. Another thing to note about the skill is while it says the max mob it can hit is 8, it can actually hit 13. This count adds up from the pickup of the mobs using Psychic Grab, as the Psychic Grab can only pick up to 5 mobs, and those 5 mobs will add towards the Psychic Shockwave max mob count. Law of Gravity is a damage over time debuff skill that latches onto a boss or a mob and deals damage to it in a certain interval for 22 seconds, and at the end of the duration, it will explode dealing a huge amount of damage with a 60-second cooldown, and costs 5 PP to use. It also has a chance to recover 1 PP every attack. If the skill is used on a mob in a training session, it can pull in other mobs depending on who it debuffs and attack other mobs around it. If that mob is defeated, an orb will take its place and continue attacking until the end of the duration. The interval will be reduced and the final damage will increase depending on the number of mobs it pulls in. If this skill is used on a boss with no mobs around it, it will get the full effect of lower interval and max final damage until the end of the duration. Since this skill is not a ultimate skill, it is able to spawn out more attacks from kinetic combo and have more chance to recover PP from using the skill. If you have it, this skill is usually used along with After Image of the Otherworld, as they share the same cooldown. Now for the common 5th job skill for Kinesis. Otherworld Goddess Blessing is the common Goddess Blessing that Kinesis use. For 40 seconds, it increases the final damage depending on the level, and randomly cycles between 4 different blessings every 4 seconds. Blessing of Recovery will recover Kinesis PP. Aegis Blessing reduces damage taken once, including the % max HP damage. Blessing of Fortitude will block 1 debuff, and Otherworldly Void will deal a large amount of damage to surrounding enemies. The cooldown for this skill is only 2 minutes and has 2 charges like every other blessing. After Image of the Otherworld is a debuff application skill to mobs that is basically another Mapleware buff with also a very low chance to recover 3% HP every attack to that mob debuff with this skill. Mana Overload is a toggle skill which every magician gets, and this increases final damage to all skills, costing % max MP every use. However, in Kinesis' case, it will consume 0.3% max HP every attack, as Kinesis doesn't have MP. I like to leave this on in every scenario as it doesn't pose much of a risk while playing Kinesis. Ethereal Form is another skill every magician can use. It turns the character yellow and any damage you take will reduce MP instead, and grants knockback immunity for 3 seconds. In Kinesis' case, it will reduce a small amount of HP instead. Also, you cannot do anything other than move while in this form for 3 seconds. Press it again to cancel out of this form. Most players will consider this to be an iframe and is pretty insane in many situations as it can help prevent a lot of one-hit kills from bosses. However, it does not resist debuffs from any damage that comes with it. Now finally, the 6th job of Kinesis. Currently, as of this video, 6th job is not entirely complete for every class in the game, so possibly in the upcoming years of this game, I will go over it once it's all released. The origin skill of Kinesis from Another Realm is essentially a nuke that will deal an insane amount of damage, and if used after Mind Over Matter, it will stop it from moving, and this consumes 5 PP to use with a cooldown of 6 minutes. Thankfully, this skill is not considered an ultimate skill, so this will also trigger the kinetic combo activation, and it will spawn out a lot of additional attacks at the end of the animation. Pretty much a guaranteed full PP recovery, though it will last like around 7 seconds in animation. Then, the first mastery core of Kinesis. Hexa Ultimate Metal Press, which is the final upgrade to Ultimate Metal Press, to now reducing the cost to 6 PP instead of 7, and further increasing the damage. Visually, this looks a lot better, and I really love the change from a water tank to Primo Gems or cubes or some Tetris blocks. And the rest are the final damage increase of 5th job skills. Really looking forward to more upcoming skills of 6th job of Kinesis, since I'm seeing the class turn from throwing real world objects to now throwing galactic shapes or possibly space itself. Alright, that's pretty long, but that covers all the skill that Kinesis currently have as of New Age release. Knowing what skill could recover PP is quite a mess from my explanation, so here's a simplified form of what skill could recover and could not recover PP. Now I will show burst and DPM off burst as a Kinesis. I will also show gameplay to let you guys visually know how it should look like. First is prepping before the burst. If you have it, use Will skill and Siren skill and make sure BPM is toggled on. Psychic Drain and Mind Tremor, you can use this together with little to no delay. Then use Otherworld Goddess Blessing. Now, the start of the burst. Use Mental Overdrive, and together, Psychic Tornado and Mind Over Matter. After that, Law of Gravity, and if you have it, After Image of the Otherworld, and Trainwreck. Then, if you have it, use Angelic Buster Link and Oz Rings like Ring of Strength or Weapon Jump. Then use the Origin skill. After Origin skill is where I would bind the boss with Mental Shock, but can be done earlier. Finally, spam Metal Press. If the PP bar is nearing 0, use Psychic Charger to recover half, and continue to spam Metal Press. If Trainwreck ends, cast it again, and continue to spam Metal Press. Also keep control of Mind Over Matter, as you should be rubbing against the boss for as long as possible until the duration ends. At this point, Mental Override should have ended, and you can use Mental Tempest to extend the burst if you choose to do so, or leave it as a panic button. I usually leave it as a panic button in case anything goes wrong in a boss fight. If you do use it, continue spamming Metal Press. During off burst, you can leave BPM toggled on and continue hitting the boss with Psychic Grab and Psychic Force to recover some PP and weave with Metal Press. Might be kind of difficult in managing, but you can start weaving Metal Press right around 25 to 30 PP recovered. After 60 seconds, use Law of Gravity and After Image once the cooldown is up. After 90 seconds is the half burst. Use Otherworld Goddess Blessing and Angelic Buster Link skill, and then use Mind Over Matter and control it to rub against the boss. It's okay if the boss moves out of it, and continue weaving Metal Press and Psychic Grab like usual. As a tip, you can put these skills on the note tab in skills so they can remind you when the cooldowns are up and could be used again. If you want to play it safe, it's not a bad idea to stay far away and just spam Psychic Shockwave instead. We'll be losing out on DPS, but surviving longer in a struggle fight is better than greeting for more damage to clear faster. So what I showed you was just a battle analysis of Kinesis. In a realistic scenario of bossing as a Kinesis would be a lot of kiting and staying at a safe distance against mobile bosses like Akechi or Lucid Phase 2. However, it should be similar with stationary bosses. So to give some tips to some Kinesis players out there or players that may be interested, I'll share some Kinesis tech and tips and some bosses. For a general tip, when you activate Mental Tempest, it will lock you in place and be invincible during this. But when you use Kinetic Jaunt, it will cancel out of the animation and still keep the invincibility until the skill ends. This invincibility lasts 7 seconds. A pretty hard tech to do, but you can get multiple Metal Press out quickly. By first using Metal Press and Jaunt, then immediately back to Metal Press twice. This would have to be done in a quick motion, and could help get a little bit more damage out. Also can be done with Mastery Metal Press too, though not super game changing. In Magnus, you can use Kinetic Pal Diver to resist the knockback attack from Magnus, and up jump and jaunt to float on top of the summoning of green spikes to avoid it. Any class can do this, just need to time it really well. In Akechi, Pink Bean, or Cygnus, you can use Deep Impact to dispel Damage Reflect or any other buffs they have. In Lotus Phase 1, when the lasers are in a plus sign, use Deep Impact to pass through it. In Phase 2 and Phase 3, if there are only one platform, and Lotus is about to use his push skill, use Kinetic Pal Diver to tank and resist the knockback. In Damien, when he is in the air using those Cheeto balls or Meteor, use Trainwreck and stand far back and up jump to continue hitting him with Psychic Shockwave to continue the DPM. If the sword is about to land while doing this, simply flash jump out. In Will, use Deep Impact to pass through Tornado in Phase 1, or jaunt over the tornado. You will notice a tornado is coming when Will pushes up his glasses. In Varishella, when she's doing her bind and push attack, holding down jaunt and up will keep you in place, and essentially resist the knockback. Could continue holding the jaunt and move a little if you're in a bad spot. Well, that's all the boss tips from this video. If you do want more on other bosses, leave a comment down below and ask for which one, and I can give advice on how to tackle them. Training as a Kinesis is pretty good, but there are still a few PP management during grinding. Psychic Shockwave is what Kinesis will use 95% of the time during your training session, and keeping up Psychic Drain on the platform to continuously hit mobs to recover PP. Psychic Shockwave alone deals quite a lot of damage and covers a huge range. It's also possible to even do lazy grinding, which is usually the elevator farming or L-shaped farming, though it's really just map dependent and personal preference. The more active way is done in a U or N shape, which will for sure yield more mob kills but may need more attention and focus if you want to maximize mob count. Then again, most classes in the game trains like this anyways. Other 5th job skills are also used occasionally when the cooldowns are up, and a great way to start collecting loot before starting the grind rotation again. Like Law of Gravity used as a multiple platform clear, and Tornado allowing Kinesis to simply flash jump around the map and still clearing just as good. Mind over matter can just be left by itself going left or right in its normal state. Not super efficient in map clearing, but it does cover a portion in mob clearing. Though a good tip for training as a Kinesis is that if you're ever running low on PP management, it's a good idea to take off some boost nodes on Psychic Drain if you're boosting it, since you want the skill to be weak and continuously hitting the mobs. All in all, once you reach 5th job as a Kinesis, training will for sure be a whole lot better. Though any problems that I've faced training as a Kinesis is that being too far away from Law of Gravity or Psychic Drain would just stop attacking, which is pretty unfortunate. So placing them in the middle of the map is the way to go. Now for the frequently asked questions of Kinesis. What are the tri-nodes of Kinesis? It will be Psychic Grab, Metal Press, Train Wreck, BPM, Kinetic Combo, and Psychic Drain. What are the 5th job skill priority? First, it will be Mind Over Matter. Law of Gravity and Psychic Shockwave are pretty much equal, and last one should be Psychic Tornado. What are the inner abilities Kinesis should aim for? Optimally, they should get +1 attack speed, % crit rate, % boss damage, or % abnormal damage. As for the optional way, they could get 20% boss damage instead, % crit rate, and % abnormal. The difference between each of them would just be 1% final damage, but in my opinion, it feels a lot more smooth to play with +1 attack speed. Passive hyper skills. There you go. Should we put points into PP into hyperstats? Yes, absolutely. All of it. This should be a high priority for bossing and training. It will increase damage output and a quality of life in general. How do I know how much PP I currently have? A good way to know how to gauge the amount you currently have is just by knowing the color. Yellow is 1 to 10 pp, blue is 11 to 20 pp, purple is 21 to 30 pp, black is 31 to 40 pp. Don't bother on counting. Learning the colors in the gauge is all you need to know, and naturally play as you go. Does Kinesis use cooldown hats? No. Are Kinesis affected by minion duration Legion? Unfortunately, no. The summons from Kinesis are not affected by it because the flavor text does not say summon duration. Do Kinesis have any party utilities? Just a 15% IED debuff, that's about it. Is Kinesis a 2-minute or 3-minute class? It's a 3-minute burst class with 90 seconds half burst. What are the recommended Oz rings? Ring of Restraint 4 and Weapon Jump 4 like most classes uses. And ring swapping for full burst and half burst. Great to use in party or covert, though if you don't want a ring swap, Continuous 4 is in my opinion the best option for Kinesis. Recommended to make as a boss mule? If you like the class and its playstyle, go for it. If not, don't, which is what every player will tell you. In my opinion, no, I don't recommend this play as a boss meal. Should I use Erda Nova to bind for half burst? It's player preference and boss dependent. If you do use it, just note you have to wait 20 seconds more before the next full 3-minute burst. It's more damage but a cost for more time. However, in a party scenario, don't do it. What's the 6th job leveling priority? Here's a chart a member from the Kinesis Discord, Amali's made. Follow this as this is the efficient path for 6th job currently as of this video. This will more likely change once they add more skills for 6th job. I will leave the Discord link of the Kinesis Discord in the description below if you have more question about the class. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the ultimate guide and showcase to the Kinesis class. The reason I made this is simply because I love playing this class, which is why I want to share everything I know about this. I may have left out some information about the class, so feel free to add more in the comments below or ask a few questions or any advice needed. I will happily answer as much as possible. So yeah, thanks for watching.